It's winter evening. We've got actually a really, I think, a fun agenda to review tonight. First, we'll start with roll call, and we'll start with you. Hank Green, Doug Murphy, Keith Ritchie, George Bennington, and Paul.
Francesca Segala.
Gene Goodman. Jake Renito. Great. Second order of business is to approve the minutes from our meeting on January 11th, 2023.
Sorry about that.
No problem. 2020. Is there a motion to approve? I move. Is there a second? Jake, thank you. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? So carried.
No, I wasn't here. So
Okay.
Abstain.
Yes. Thank you. Next order of business is the Caffeine Carburetors event to be held on Wednesday, evening on October 22nd. Doug, floor is yours.
Oh, thank you for seeing me tonight. I can't actually remember the exact number, but I think it will be our 12th show. So I'm here tonight to seek your permission to use the Waveney Park grounds Sunday, October 22nd. Last I thought it was a great show. I think the town really enjoyed it. I was very proud
Can you
of
speak up just a little bit because we are in this.
Sure. I was very proud of my crew. I think I had 26 volunteers. We worked within soccer games, baseball games, weddings, and rainstorm that came in late in the afternoon. So again, that's my purpose for being here tonight.
Okay.
Any questions?
You have met with the permit with the police.
Yes, we have their approval.
Okay.
I have all the insurance for the event,
Mhm.
both in town and they approved. Dr. Murphy has all the paperwork.
Right.
So we're ready to go. A few improvements. At each show we look at and we can tweak the next one. We will increase, or I will increase the amount of volunteers. I think we'll go up to about 30, maybe even more. To just orchestrate the event. We installed or we used walkie-talkies. I think we're up to 12 or 14 now, which gives us great communication throughout the acreage. So we pretty well orchestrated the event. I don't think we had many complaints last October. We always get one or two. Yeah, there's always bad apple in that bunch sometimes.
It also be noted the feedback, I think, from everybody who was there, including especially the police, we thought it was much better organized event than years previous. And both traffic flow in and out worked a lot more smoothly.
We're even looking at that, the exit, especially using Lapham Road a little bit more. We can go straight down to Lapham Road, and then we can veer off to use the pool exit as well. So we could be even better getting the cars out of the event in that direction.
Are there any questions from members of the commission? Okay, if not, is there a motion to approve? Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Francesca, thank you. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you. Good luck. I think it's a great event for the town.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Pops and Department Announcement, waiving proposal for June 11th, 2023. Carriage or.
How are you, everyone? And I'm joined again by Sandra with that from the Norwalk Symphony. So, but we wanted to have a follow-up to our first Pumps and Profit last year, and which we thought very well. Had an initial meeting with John B in October, I think, and kind of went over what we had in mind. Be very similar to what we did last year. We've got June 11th reserved in the calendar right now. It's Sunday. It's a week earlier than what we did last year. Part of our thought being that we wanted to do it, try it before the end of the school year, which is the 14th this year. And so we know that we lost some of the families who headed out on vacation as soon as school let out. So we wanted to see how that would work. Let's see, this year the theme is gonna be in like Hollywood, so we're gonna do. Hollywood theme, things that are in movies and maybe a bit Broadway, but. That is our theme. And yeah, well, I mean, there's a few differences we wanted to talk about, not a lot, but. Last year we did 1,200, this is a free concert. We set up Eventbrite and we had 1,200 tickets allocated and we sold that out. And we're hoping to move that up to 1,500 this year. So that's I think everything, yes, John, but I think everything went pretty smoothly last year, as far as parking and I don't think we had any issues of blowing the grass and everything kind of went smoothly. So we wanted to, we think there's room to grow. So we wanted to make it a little bit, a little bigger this year. What were other things?
The porta potties were one thing. So we rented porta potties last year based on the recommendation, and so we had 10 regular and 2 handicap, but for the 2-hour period that people were really there, they were very underused. So I know that there are rules and it's a health department thing probably a little bit, but if there's flexibility, because it was, other than the orchestra itself, the biggest expense for the event. And it just seemed like it was really, underutilized for the amount of time that people, even if they came at 5 and stayed till it was over at 8 kind of thing. There was not any huge rush to use them, so, yeah.
It's just a 1-day event, right?
It is, it's a one evening actually.
Yeah,
So,
we should be able to get around with. Because it's 10 people per working. Per one porta potty,
Oh, okay.
so you should be able to.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll look into how that works, and maybe, and if there's a recommendation of who we should connect with on that.
I can talk to you after.
Okay, great.
We're gonna, excuse me, so we're hoping to do maybe fewer, but maybe place them a little differently. Well, one of the things, the other things we want to do is to reach out to the senior community this year and encourage them to join us. Which we didn't do last year, but we're hoping that's in our plans. The where the porta potties was last year was great because they were a bit out of sight, but they were all so hard to get to if if you had limited mobility. And we had
You have to go all the way down around the front of the parking or the lawn of the building and around the outside, and so. The garden was nice enough to let a few people use inside the building, but it was a little challenging for a couple of people that, it was just a really long distance and you can't go the other way because there's stairs there, so.
Where were they?
So if you're looking at Waveney
Right,
building
from
from the front, they were over in the parking area along the left-hand side.
Same
And-
place before.
Right, but for people that are on the back lawn, they have to go all the way around this right-hand side. And if you have a wheelchair or something like that, you still have to go all the way around the front. It's not even like you can cut through under the portico and go that way. So it was a little challenging. That was, we did get some feedback on that, but again, part of it was if we know ahead of time that that's the limitation, then we can also let people know too. So I don't know if there's any way around it, having handicap in one place and the person in another place, or whatever.
Sure.
So,
Backup date, I can't remember, I think we talked a bit about this when we met, but does the 18th still work? You happen to know? Dina?
I have both dates on the
You
calendar,
do, okay,
So-
great.
whichever is decided, or if I have a request for one of them, I will touch base with you first.
Okay, awesome. So that's, we're thinking a week later for each Father's Day, which is what we did last year. So that's what we're thinking. I think the only other thing was, we're gonna enhance it with the sound system this year. That was some of the feedback we got, was that for some of the people a little bit further back, it was like, I had a sound system for the conductor and for the Star Spangled Banner, but we're gonna work on,
it won't be a lot, but just enough to bring up, the brass and everything is fine. It's the strings that you kind of lose when you're playing something that's really not as loud or as lively. So, and then choice of music will also fit so that we make sure that we don't play anything that's not livelier, loud. So, but it won't be huge amplification, but it'll be a little bit just to get that sound pushed out a little bit towards the back. So. That was a minute.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you're not going to be doing any classical music this year?
Well,
I love
it's orchestral music. So, and depending on Hollywood, I mean, if we did something that was a big classical piece in a movie or something like that, but it probably wouldn't be, the traditional Beethoven or, Mozart or something.
So
like
an
that.
example I like to use is the band music, it has Rossini. Right, and so we haven't worked through
Right.
what, we played around with a few ideas, but there will be some classical pieces that, there'll be the John Williams and that sort of thing, but there'll also be some nice classical pieces. That's.
We're working on repertoire, we haven't gotten that far yet, so.
Any other questions? Motion to approve? Keith, thank you. Second. Kim, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? So carries. Great, because the feedback I got was terrific. I think including more of the seniors too is a great idea.
We have more time this year too. Last year, I think we met with you in April and said, let's get it done and get it out. We have plenty more time this year to really.
We really appreciate it.
to-
Again, brings tremendous value to the town, to the park, and thank you for your efforts.
Well, thank you guys, for being really supportive and we really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Great.
Jake, I will reach out to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next is a report from the New Canaan Nature Center. Jean and
Well, we're fortunate to have Joel direct us here, so that instead of.
Oh, there you go. I'm sorry.
Instead of myself or Doug giving a presentation, we're going to share direct from the horse's mouth, so to speak, no insulted.
Great.
And obviously, I will be able to ask questions and get a much better answer, obviously.
No, sorry, I didn't recognize you.
That's okay.
Period last year.
So I do this every year for those of you who are new, and I know we have a few new members. The New Canaan Nature Center Association does operate out of what is known as Bliss Park. So we are in a town park, which is why it's relevant for me to come here and give an update on how we're doing this. I do have a slideshow that I'll be showing, and I'll read off the highlights. One sheet that this is a summary of the revenues from last year and show you what's different program areas. So I figured that would be very relevant. And also it has on there a number of participants in the different programs, which Jean had asked me to provide. So I will go over very, very briefly some of the history and why the nature center is there in the agreement, because I think it's really important to understanding my role with the town and the Nature Center Association. But I'll go through it very quickly. Yeah.
Close the door, I say. Thank you.
I can drown them out too. So just for reference, in 1959, Susan Dwight Bliss, who owned all the property, she lived in the house that the First Presbyterian Church is currently in. She donated that to the church, and she donated the 40 acres that are the Nature Center, which is the rest of her estate, to the town of New Canaan for purposes of a nature center or arboretum or bird sanctuary or passive recreation or related purposes or museum site. That's the exact wording that I've repeated several times. After that, they donated that. They determined that it was a unique park since it was donated to be a nature center. And so 6 private citizens got together and formed the nonprofit, which is what I'm the executive director of. And they went into a letter of agreement with the town in 1960, and we've been operating the park to fulfill the deed since then. And so we've been doing it over 60 years, and from our standpoint, it's been a great relationship. So if you're ever wondering, why, because a lot of questions come up, especially in budget season, why is town and tax dollars going towards things in the nature center? All has to do with the letter of agreement and how that was set up. And the town owns all of it. The only thing we own is, computers and furniture and stuff inside. So it is all owned by the town. If we make improvements to the building, it's all owned by the town of New Canaan and the grounds. So If you ever want those details, the letter of agreement spells out pretty well, and also the deed and things like that. And if you're ever really curious, like Doug, you're gonna stop by as a new member and we're gonna walk around, and I'm happy to give a tour and give a lot more detail to anybody who wants to. It's a good excuse for me to get out of my office. So just going down to the sheet that I passed out in front of you. How we did during the last year, it is an unusual year because of the bottom line, the other income, the PPP loan forgiveness, that's a big chunk that skews our budget. So usually we're hovering around 2 million. And last year, the 228,000 of the loan forgiveness that, you know, we'll never see a chunk like that again, but we're very grateful for it because we were able to do a lot of deferred maintenance that we did not do during COVID. As you can see, the preschool is our biggest program. Usually it's about 50%, summer camps another 20. So just between those two programs, it's about 65% of our dollars. And then we write grants. We have an annual appeal that makes up the contribution section, and environmental education, which I'll talk a little bit about a few programs. That's where we're doing outreach. We're traveling to different schools or libraries and doing programs all over Fairfield County and New York City and surrounding areas. Which is very high mission, not a lot of money, but it's important for us to spread our expertise and our work. So, yeah, is there any questions about, in general, the different programs we run? I mean, preschool and summer camp were both started in the 60s. Our preschool is actually the first nature-based preschool in the country. It's claim to fame. No one's disputed us yet, so we keep saying it. But it was, we've been doing it for longer than anybody. Any general questions about revenues, or yeah?
Just in terms of expenses, on the expense side,
Yep.
you guys balance budget or?
As I'll show later with all our maintenance projects, so I don't go into, I mean, 75% is all salary, so.
Sure.
But anything pretty much extra, we are determining what we have and what we can put back into the property. And I'll show you the projects that we did last year.
Okay.
So we're not stockpiling or hoarding, it's all going back into the nature center. So preschool I talked about as our biggest program, and certainly most important financially, but also mission driven. Summer camp, as you see there, has almost 1,000 campers a year. And there's not that many summer camps in town, so it's a nice program to be so close. And our second biggest as far as revenue goes. It is syrup season, as you'll see from the bucket up there. So we just tapped our maple trees. That's a fun program that we do. And the rest of environmental education, we are traveling down to New York City and doing New York Public Library programs. We're going to different schools in Stamford and Norwalk. We have people come to us, so unfortunately busing is really expensive, and so less and less people are getting to us. We do a lot of grant fundraising so that we can offer those programs for free to schools, so that that's the biggest deterrent of coming up to us. Is so we look for a lot of grant funding to bus the kids to us to get them out. The Haley Project's an example of one of these. It's all Title I schools in Norwalk. It's a watershed ecology program. They come to the nature center one day, then we meet them in the Long Island Sound. That picture, it's them, all fifth graders and waders out with seine nets and catching things, and that's not an experience they would have otherwise. So it's really neat programs. And these are the things a lot of people don't know that we do. The New York Public Libraries we've been doing for a long time. That is actually a picture of me back when I was an educator. But it serves with their after school programs, and they're in Richmond. A lot of times they go straight from the schools just to their local library and wait for their parents to get off work, and they have a budget to bring people like us into for enrichment programs. So it's again a really neat program. If you didn't know, we have a relationship with the New York Botanical Gardens. You can take New York Botanical Garden courses at the Nature Center. There's a whole catalog for the spring, so you have to sign up through them, but that's just another added program that some people just don't know about, but that's been going on since the 80s. Probably familiar with our big community events, Fall Fair, Winter Wonderland, when Santa comes, and our Syrup Saturday, which is for the pancake breakfast for our syrup season, and to your sheet in front of you, that makes up, thousands of people that come through every year. Fall Fair being our biggest, where we get anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 people coming through. Our fundraisers, a luncheon can make up anywhere from 8 to 10% of our budget, so it's a very big fundraiser. And then we have our Harvest Fest, which is the beer and wine festival of music, and those are all just going to helping our general operations. And our animal collection, which is unique to us. We have our resident Birds of Prey. That is actually Kira. She just passed away this last year. A lot of our birds we originally got around 2002. And so we've lost a lot of our original birds, so they lived over 20 years with us, which was a really long time for them. But like that bird taught thousands of programs over 20 years and saw, thousands of kids, and it's just, that's what they dedicated their life, because they're permanently injured. And then she spread environmental awareness for 20 years, on people like me's arm. And so it's a neat thing that we're a final home for a lot of these animals. And we take care of them the rest of their life. When they come here, it's their permanent home. One thing, if you'll remember from last year's, our land management plan that we had designed, I presented on it specifically. We're, after the plan came out, really it's now just implementing it, and not to go into too many details, the document's 82 pages. And basically what it says is get rid of invasives and plant natives. And that's over 82 pages. It goes into a lot of detail. So that's pretty much what we focus on. We are removing as many invasive species as possible and replacing them with natives, which helps solve the local flora and fauna. So we've been doing a lot of work with that. One thing we always keep in mind, not only to preserve the habitats, also that it's a public park, so we want to make it accessible and nice for just people who are walking their dogs or just using the park, and also that it works well with our programs. So that's how we determine, what's best for that. Certainly because John's here in the Parks Department, cuts the grass. And whenever we need, if there's specific things, like we had a drainage issue on one of our fields, and Public Works came and helped us out with that. Pretty much we maintain the trails and we implement this plan. And then if we need something, we'll talk to John, we'll talk to Public Works, and we'll ask. But we're pretty much maintaining most of the gardens and natural areas ourselves, and town certainly helps out when we need it. And that's pretty much it, right? Yeah. The other thing that's that we usually plow, we don't plow the road, but we clear the snow that we haven't had, which is nice. For our paths, again, if our Bobcat skid steer is broken down, or our grounds director is out, I'll email John and be like, hey, can you help us out? And he'll send the guys over. You what? We'll try. We'll try, exactly. We know we're after the schools and after town hall. Right. Okay. This last year, we did a lot of improvements on the grounds, because we really buttoned up during COVID. So I'm just going to run through some pictures. This is a new chicken run, which, if you're not familiar with the term, that's where they walk around outside their coop, and they need that screened in so they don't get eaten by all the hawks who they sit on top of it and they just look in. How do I get that? This is on our greens, a new stone fireplace, it was a nice feature that we added. We do a lot of events out there on the field. That's the field when you drive down next to the visitor center that's open. A few projects, town owns the buildings, but this is sort of an outbuilding, the Sugar Shack, where we make maple syrup. The roof was, 50 years old, so that's something we replaced this last year. This gazebo, again, we built an ornamental gazebo with all these curves. And so we felt it was our responsibility to patch it up, and all those curves mean way more money, which is the problem. It's all has to be hands curved, and so those are two roofs that we fixed up. If you're familiar with the property, we've got two ponds, and the farthest one, there was an old boardwalk behind it that was just broken down. You can step through it. So this last year, we replaced the boardwalk and opened up that trail again. So just, again, it's a trail project to get to the back end of our property. And these are pictures of a couple of ponds that were memorial ponds that were gifted years ago. We fix up the liners, fix up the pumps, and these are all public areas that people can visit, so. This is just an example of what, to the question of the expense side, when we hit, our fiscal year ends June 30th. So when we get to the spring, we have an idea and we approve blank projects to put back in. And this was just a list. We did a few more things inside. If you haven't been to the visitor center, it's all new flooring and a new front desk, and it's all updated in our new kitchen. So that's what we do with our extra. Certainly this year we had so many projects because that PPP loan forgiveness just allowed us to do a lot more. And that was unexpected. So usually we don't do quite as much in one year, but that's it. I'll just end with looking ahead. Our strategic plan ended in 2022, so we have our next 5 years out mapped out. We just met with Tiger and really talked about figuring out long-term plans for the buildings and what our plans are, and everything we ever do. If we're making improvements, if we're wanting to change anything drastically, it's always a conversation with town, because town New Canaan owns the buildings. And any work we're doing, like the land management plan or redoing trails, they're always aware of what we're doing, and we're always talking. And yeah, that's pretty much as far as the park goes. We're into our land management plan, which is exciting. And we're looking to always improve the place and make it good for New Canaan, which is why it was given to us to at least operate, was for benefit of New Canaan. So that's what we try to do. That's the nature center over the last year. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that's quick, yeah.
Outside of, PPP loan forgiveness.
Yeah.
Is this pie chart going to look the same in 5 years, or are there any growth areas here?
Well, the pie chart will be, it's already skewed because of that PPP loan. Like preschool, that's a little bigger, and so is summer camp as far as the percentage. I have no reason to believe summer camp is going to go down. I have no reason to believe preschool, especially in the next few years, because so many families moved out with young kids. And our program has been full for the entire time. I've been the executive director for almost 6 years, and we've had a waiting list pretty much every year. So I would assume that would continue. And so just those two programs, which make up 65 or 70% of our business, we think we can rely on that. Contributions, obviously this year, it's always precarious when you get into when anyone talks about recession, because giving can be affected if the economy takes a turn. So we haven't seen a huge dip yet, but that's always where our revenues can fluctuate, because if the market tanks, then that does affect our giving that we get. So I guess it's a long answer to, I don't see that changing very much.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bill, on the land management program.
Yeah.
How many, the one here, maybe was 5 years, I think. Maybe go on for the longer. What's the duration?
Oh, there's no end to our plan. It's a forever. Some of them, and this is, we're trying out methods to, like, we have Phragmites. We can't get equipment in to dig it out because it's so wet. So we're trying not to use, sprays or anything. So one of the things in the plan is, well, you can shade it out. So that's an extremely long-term plan to plant red maples and have them grow to maturity and then shade out Phragmites. That's a 30-year solution for that. Although my favorite thing over COVID, we were able to mow our Phragmites field, and then our preschool is pretty much outside the whole time. Like 95% of the COVID year, they were outside, 40 degrees and raining, and they were out. And one of the groups, their home base was right in that mowed down Phragmites field, and where they played and tramped it, none of the Phragmites grew back. So it's a similar, it's sort of like the animals, like the goats, if they're eating something, like just that trampling down. So preschoolers are good at invasive removal.
That's great.
It's things like that. So there's no end date to our plan. And it's certainly looking back and adjusting as we move along, but it's a long-term plan. Larry Wiener Associates, who's based out of Philadelphia, they pretty well-known native landscaping firm, and that's who designed it. So we're excited about that.
You didn't mention the land conservation trust trail that goes out. Maryland, which I think is great. I walk my dogs with it all the time. Can you comment on that?
Sure, that, as soon as you go out the rock wall there, now you're on land trust property. But certainly the Land Trust and Nature Center, we collaborate all the time, so we did, whenever we could, we helped with some of the like clearing of rocks and things for that trail. And we have certainly noticed an uptick of just casual walkers through there since that's been open. So I think that's been open for, I would say, 5 years.
Yeah.
That's my memory. And it's generated a lot of great traffic. So I think it's fantastic. It is a land trust, to maintain that in between, but we certainly help out when we can.
Last year, we approved the collaboration with the Boy Scouts.
Yeah,
How is that working?
it's, I would love, I think it's been great. So just as a reminder, the scouts wanted a home, St. A's, there was a troop that was there that they're under their construction. There's others that were with, I think, Methodist Church, and there was issues with their permanent home that I don't really know anything about, but they came to us and just asked for meeting space, and most nights our Sturgis room, which is our meeting room, is open. I live on site. And so most of the time I just go over and unlock the door and I lock it up when they're done, and they do some volunteer projects for us. They certainly, they book, like scouting programs. Sometimes I feel like they feel obligated to do that since we're giving them a home, but I think it's been a great relationship. And I would encourage you to reach out to the local scouts to see if they feel the same, but that's the feedback that we've gotten.
Thank you. Are there any other questions and comments from
That's great.
Bill? Thank you very much for attending. I look forward to this presentation every year, and you guys do a phenomenal job. And thank you.
Thanks. And if there's any, like I said, in between, I'll see you next year, but you can stop by, and I'm always happy to chat and walk around, because that's
Appreciate
a fun part of my job. So thank you all.
Wow.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Next, Mike Benevento, update on the Buchanan Athletic Foundation.
Yeah, maybe we can go to that. Number one would be great, John, thanks. Yeah, I didn't, or actually, no, even number two.
Sorry.
Thanks for having me. I'm Mike Benevento. I am the chairman of the Buchanan Athletic Foundation. I think I know most of you. And I am here this evening for a couple of reasons. I do this once a year, generally for all of the town boards. I've already been in front of the Board of Selectmen. I will go in front of the Board of Finance on the 28th of February. And then town council as well. And the primary purpose is to update you all on our yearly review. This year has a different tone, though, because we're involved in some exciting projects that I want to bring you up to speed on as well. So, John, if we run to that second slide. So just a quick reminder for those of you that are new or refresher for others. The foundation was established in 2016, and then somewhere in 2018, 2019, I can't remember exactly when, we entered into an official public-private partnership with the town of Buchanan and the Board of Education, given that many of our projects overlap both land masses. And as part of that, we also did two things from an operational standpoint. Number one, we established an enterprise zone. And what that means is effectively the Athletic Foundation from June 15th to roughly August 15th runs those fields within that footprint as a for-profit enterprise zone. And when I say for-profit, it's not really for-profit. We're a nonprofit organization. We run it, we charge outside parties for renting the fields, and then the net profit that is generated from that enterprise zone is passed through to the town of Buchanan, and it is deposited into what we call a turf replacement account, an endowment account, to solve for what was the reason why the Athletic Foundation was started in the first place in 2016, when the surface at Dunning Stadium was going to fail. and was going to be condemned if we weren't able to replace that surface in that summer. And there's a whole host of reasons as to why that happened, but one of the issues was there was no money to replace the surface. And so as part of the projects that took place, we established this turf replacement account so that we can build an endowment and help contribute to the resurfacing of all of these turf fields, which roughly have a 10-year life from the time that they're first put in. So we're trying to solve for the future from that standpoint. What we also did, or what's governed by that public-private partnership, is the player use fee that had been charged through the various programs in town, the youth programs, the youth sports programs, and we layered in some of the, or all of the recreation programs as well. It's a $25 tax, for lack of a better term, that was passed by town council long before the beginning of the Athletic Foundation. But from our constituents, we had heard that there was, they would like some transparency as to where exactly that fee goes. And so the Athletic Foundation took over the collection of that fee. And so we take in the player use fee from all of the spring and fall programs, everybody that uses those fields. And then we very clearly distribute that into two different places. 50% of it goes into that turf replacement account that I referenced before. 50% of it goes into an enhancements account. We call the shiny new toys account, things when we're going to build new stuff that would go in there. So when I speak to people in town, it's very clear that that $25, we are simply a pass-through. It comes to the Athletic Foundation, it goes 50% into turf replacement, 50% into enhancements. Those funds are held at the Community Foundation in investable accounts. We do this accounting once a year. We're in the process of doing it right now, and we will sweep those monies into our accounts at the Community Foundation, likely in the beginning or kind of the middle of this month. I have one last thing that we have to do with our bookkeeper, Andy Gordon, our treasurer, who used to be a PRC commissioner, is kind of does that calculation for us, and we're just have to tweak one last thing. But you can see up here, from an enterprise zone standpoint, this year we generated $68,165 in gross revenues. That's down a little over 16% from that should have said 2021. This is a 2022 number. And the reason for that is primarily one lacrosse tournament that we hosted in 2021. There was a scheduling conflict that we weren't able to host it this year. That was the majority of that 16.5%. And then the soccer program, Luke Green's program, rented the fields a little bit less from an hourly standpoint than they did the prior year. So, but it's still a pretty healthy number, I think, from our perspective. And I've said this a million times, when we started this program, the idea was to crawl, walk, and run. Last year, we ran pretty hard at, close to $80,000 in gross revenues. I think the way that Bobby Rushton, who was our executive director that really started this de novo, set this up, I'm not going to say it runs itself, but it kind of runs on rails now that we have pretty consistent tenants that come in and rent from us each summer. And now we just have to make sure that we stay in compliance with the town and make sure that those, we keep up those relationships so that we get this kind of rental revenue every year. And from our benefit, I think this was an agreement with town council when we established this. It's working as it was originally planned, at this point 4 years ago. So one piece of information here, the third bullet point. So as you probably all know, Bobby Rushton, who was our executive director and assistant lacrosse coach, a third grade teacher at South School, left to become the athletic director at Wilton. And I would tell you, I was a reference call for Bobby on a couple of different jobs that he was trying to get. And in my conversation with the superintendent at Wilton, I said, I'm going to do my town an absolute disservice here, because the glowing recommendation that I will give this kid, your gain is going to be our loss. And my hope is that he can be there for a couple of years. And then one day, the town of McDaniel will get him back here, because he was an absolute animal when it came to things like this, which we're a volunteer organization. Bobby has probably 4 full-time jobs already. And yet he took this on for us. It's a paid position, but he went above and beyond in terms of establishing what became the enterprise zone. John Carosa is also an assistant lacrosse and football coach at the high school. And he is a teacher, a special ed teacher in the high school as well. So I think we have another great person to replace Bobby in John. He's agreed to do it. We just voted at our last board meeting to bring him on as our new executive director. And it's an important position because you really have to have somebody that has a good liaison relationship with the people in the school, the people in town, and quite frankly, the people that run our athletic programs, namely, you know, our biggest tenant for the enterprise zone in the summer is Eclipse Lacrosse, which is run by Chip Brezio, who is, you know, the head varsity lacrosse coach, and John is his assistant. So we have good continuity there, which is why I have a lot of confidence that the enterprise zone should continue to run, as I said, on rails. And I'm hopeful that we can start to work in concert with the town. We do a good job scheduling and working with John and his team and the fields committee to make sure we have everything in sync to allow those fields to be rented. And if we can really get it in sync, there's even some room for additional revenue that will come in, again, for the benefit of the town, and hopefully that we don't run into this problem replacing turf, or at least the athletic foundation can make a healthy contribution 10 years from now, or as these fields come up from the use of life standpoint. The fourth bullet point here is what we have been working on for the last couple of years. Quite frankly, you know, the Athletic Foundation is really a fundraising commission, right? We're a public partnership with the town, but our portion of it is really raising private dollars from the town and townspeople in order to contribute and enhance the athletic facilities in our community. And the mission statement is very much community in all sports. And I'll say that over and over again so people hear it, but sometimes we don't do a great job of marketing ourselves, and people will get confused that they think we're a lacrosse organization or a football organization or a soccer organization. We are all sports and community. And our largest donor to date to the Athletic Foundation has been a family with athletes that are track people and field hockey people. So that multi-million-dollar track that we built out there was hugely supported by people in town. That probably has the fewest varsity athletes that use it from a facility standpoint, but the most townspeople that actually use it. And if you just anecdotally walk by, you'll see in the summer, there's 1 million people running and walking on that track, and they're not varsity track athletes. They're people like you and I. So we started the silent portion of what we've campaign, or what we've marketed as the Marinelli campaign. We did that really at the beginning of COVID, and then obviously got a little bit derailed with COVID. But in the last 18 months, from a silent standpoint, and this is the way we run these campaigns, most big capital campaigns run this way. You build an anchor tenant base for people that are willing to make big contributions, and then you publicly launch your campaign to make it well known so that you get all of the cats and dogs to come in and contribute. We publicly announced the Marinelli campaign at our annual fundraiser, which was held at the Country Club in middle to late November. Actually, it was the Tuesday night before the Turkey Bowl game on Thursday night or Thursday morning of Thanksgiving. So timing was right. We had huge attendance. It was very successful from a fundraising standpoint. At that event, we also announced an expansion to our master plan, and there's a slide in here about our master plan, but there's 2 new exciting projects that have been approved by the town for 2 other projects beyond our initial scope of the master plan that we developed 3 or 4 years ago. That's an indoor basketball facility that will be located on the grounds, likely on the high school campus. And then the idea, we hear all the time that even though we've built all this turf, there's massive bottleneck for turf, and people just want and need more turf. And it's amazing that you build this and that you don't have enough capacity. And I understand why. There's a trickle-down effect. You know, we want everybody to have the opportunity to not be rained out in March and April in the spring, in times where in the Northeast, it's really just hard to have athletic programs without a turf surface, just because of the weather. And so oftentimes it's a complete trickle down, and the programs that get canceled are the kindergarten, first, second, third grade lacrosse or soccer, or, you know, because they're not able to be on the grass field because we close those fields. So there's a need, quite frankly. And so what we've talked about, and in concert with the Board of Ed, Dr. Lutzy, and actually the principal at Saks Middle School also, because a lot of their school programs from a recreation standpoint, when they get outside, get rained out for the very same reason. So they're all supportive, and we announced that we're going to turf some area of the Saks fields to create additional turf footprint. So again, Kevin and the selectmen and the Board of Ed and Dr. Lutzy have all been supportive of us expanding this master plan. Again, none of that's been funded. It hasn't been designed or anything like that. But from our standpoint, it's important to continue to move the 5-year plan or the master plan forward with additional projects. So that was exciting that we announced there. The other thing that I don't know that we've fully talked about it, but certainly I've talked to George about it. I've talked to Dr. Lutzy about it. I've talked to Kevin about it. And we formally asked permission to the Board of Selectmen as part of the public-private partnership. The Athletic Foundation was granted naming rights for certain assets. And so we felt after we built the Water Tower 2 and 3 and rehabbed and really completely rebuilt Water Tower 1, the Athletic Foundation felt like those were assets that certainly were, places that we could find support if we found somebody willing to name them. The idea from our board was we could rally lots of people around a single name, and Lou Marinelli was that name that we came up with, and we vetted this through the entire town. Now, per the Triple P, the actual vote and permissioning of naming anything in town has to be done by town council. We've done that, or we will do that, but the plan was to educate and kind of socialize this with everybody first, that the Athletic Foundation basically put a price tag on Water Tower 1, that if we could raise $1 million or north of $1 million in Lou Marinelli's name, we would like to rename Water Tower 1 the Lou Marinelli Youth Football Complex. Lou was nice enough to lend his name and allow us to do that in his honor. It's obviously good for his program and really good for our town. It's funny, people get lost up there. Which one's Water Tower 1? Which one's Water Tower 2? And I say all the time, well, it could be the George Pennington Field for $1 million. It's not a problem. Nobody will get lost again. But at least this is our intent. And I will formally make that request. We've already raised through the $1 million. I will formally make that request to town council, likely in the March budget meeting. But that is our intent, is to rename Water Tower 1 the Lou Marinelli Youth Football Complex. That is basically the ongoings of what the Athletic Foundation has done this past year. Now I'd like to just give you an update on some of the exciting things that we have from a project standpoint that will get done, shovel in the ground this fiscal year, fiscal 23 into 24. This is just a picture of the original master plan. So this should be familiar to everybody. The black line around the outside of that, footprint is what was designated to be the master plan and enterprise zone footprint that the Athletic Foundation sort of has purview over. After we built Water Tower 1, 2, 3, and redid the track, we developed a master plan that had a couple of things in it. On this page, you can see down at the bottom, that's Dunning, and it's a Dunning rehabilitation, including a new entranceway, press box, concession stand. It's super exciting. There'll be some renderings that you'll see on the next couple of slides. One of I think the most exciting things is, in addition to the press box, which, well, let me talk about that first. The press box, the reason why Dr. Lutzy and a lot of people at school are excited about this is, again, we're all sports and community, right? There's a lot of people, a lot of kids in the high school in particular, that may not be athletes, but touch athletics through the audiovisual programming, streaming, and oftentimes go on to make careers of this, or certainly go on to college. And so we've established, what we're building is a new press box there that will effectively be a working classroom. It will have permanent equipment in there that rivals anything that you would see at NBC Sports, ESPN, and really super uber professional classroom-like setting that they will be able to live broadcast games from. That gets, Dr. Lutzy and Bill Egan super excited. It gets the town excited because, I mean, one of my son's best friends is at Syracuse Newhouse now and will make a career as a professional broadcaster. He started at Buchanan High School as a football player, as a freshman, and then by sophomore year said, I don't want to play football anymore, but I want to be involved in this program, and was broadcasting games all through high school, and then ended up broadcasting the Little League World Series through the ESPN Kids Cast as a senior in high school before he went to Newhouse. He wouldn't have had that experience if he didn't have the experience at Buchanan High School to be able to do something like this program. We want to give those kids upgraded tools to give them the very best to be able to do that. We have a lot of support from sports executives in town that work at NBC Sports, ESPN, CBS Sports, and they've all been very supportive. So that's a super exciting piece of the Dunning rehab. The other really exciting piece of the Dunning rehab is a whole new concession stand and bathroom area that will sit kind of towards the back of the press box, if you're familiar with the layout at Dunning. And why that's especially exciting is because we've designed it to service both the inside of the stadium and the outside. So the way that we've thought about it and really, directed Richter and Segan and the architects is inside of the stadium for game day events, but outside of the stadium for everything that happens at R2, 1, and 3 on Saturdays and Sundays. And really what we want it to be and how they've designed it is a meat park setting, like the Apple Cart, right? So you can close it on the inside, but open it to the outside, have picnic areas, have families be able to come there, eat, be with their kids while they're participating or not, just run to like they do to the Apple Cart. And the vendor that will run that area is also super excited, and he's going to get a completely upgraded, more than what the snack stand is today at Dunning Stadium. So I think between those two things, a new entranceway, donor wall to Dunning, new bathrooms, which we could talk forever about. I know more about bathrooms than I ever wanted to. It's going to be super exciting for that complex, and I think really ties in our idea of what the footprint and the luxury. What I always said, the luxury that we have as a campus versus some other places, right? This is we're fortunate enough to have this footprint to be able to work with. The other piece of the master plan that will be, I didn't think it was going to get done this year, but the money has poured in, is to the upper left side, a new varsity baseball stadium that will be where the current JV field sits at Capo, which is literally right there. Right there. Exactly. Forever, we've had a lot of feedback from the baseball community and the community in general that Mead Park is an incredible baseball field. It's a great setting, but it's a natural surface that has 7 trees that are in the outfield. That, my son who plays varsity baseball and is a center fielder can tell you that's a live ball when it hits the tree and goes down. It's a ground rule that is, it's odd. It's a beautiful tree that sits in center field. It is literally in the middle of the playing surface. The other interesting fact is we are the only team in the FCAC that has to take a bus to their home games from the campus. And it's also one of the only facilities that doesn't have a restroom facility where you have to walk to the Apple Cart to actually use the restroom in the middle of a varsity baseball game. The umpires get particularly upset about that. So this has been contemplated for a long time in the master plan. And what's exciting to me, who's going to have a senior next year, but really to the baseball community, is the amount of directed funds that have poured in over the last couple of months that are specifically targeted, and we will take restricted or unrestricted dollars. These are restricted dollars to rehab the varsity baseball field. And we have Richter and Segan working on that now. They're currently surveying the land And we believe that we're going to be able to get design plans and potentially put a stake in the ground towards the end of this summer and you know. The thought would be to open that up for the spring of 2024. So those are a couple of really exciting projects that we have going on, shovels in the ground. And if we go to the next couple of slides, John, you can just we have some renderings. I had a meeting this morning where we're doing some value engineering around the Dunning Stadium project to make sure that we get the numbers in line. But this you can see here. I've promised everybody, you know, the donor wall on the left there, we've established a certain level. If you've given a certain amount, you get yourself on the donor wall. People have been incredibly generous. That will be prominently displayed at the new entrance to Dunning. You can see that's a tower with a new ticket booth. I just think the facade is really nice. And then over to the right there is the concession stand and the new bathrooms that I was talking about. You can probably go down to the next one, John. This is just another look, another view. You can see up to the right there, the white building is the contemplated new press box. That's looks bigger than it actually is going to be, but it is because we're tweaking it right now. It was originally designed as a 2-story building. I don't know, it's particularly expensive because you have to have an elevator with a 2-story building. We're trying to value engineer it down to a 1-story building, but it will not be the trailer that currently sits at Dunning. It will be something that looks more collegiate, I would say. If you go to the next one, John, I think we get another one of the, yeah, that's it. That's the press box from the inside. There's like a video board there. This is the 2-story version. Like I said, it may or may not end up being that. And then down to the bottom right is the view from the field. So, you know, I've said for a long time, my kids make fun of me. We're trying to build the University of New Canaan. We're going to get there. And so those are interesting renderings. I think there's one last one, John, on the Capo Field, maybe. I don't remember.
I didn't get that.
Okay.
That was the
Apologies.
third email. I didn't get.
Yeah, it's not, it's just more, they're actually not fun renderings to look at. They're more site plans and give you an idea, but what you saw in the master plan drawing in the initial part is really what it is. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but that's the extent of my presentation. The last thing I would say is we are currently engaged in the budget process. I will not answer any numbers tonight because, as I said, I'm in the middle of a value engineering exercise. So the first selectman and the selectman asked me, 2 weeks ago, and I gave them a very obtuse answer that I would be more than happy to give that answer. I am presenting to the Board of Finance on February 28th. I'm not going to be able to sidestep any number questions at that meeting. So I promise you by then, we will be through with our value engineering exercise. But from the private standpoint, we've been very successful in our fundraising. I can be pretty confident in that.
Are there any questions or comments from the members? Yeah, is the baseball field that you're looking at, is that going to be turf as well?
It will be turf.
And how's that going to affect the softball fields that I don't leak into?
So John and I and Jay and others can talk a lot about that because we've definitely contemplated it.
I want to go a little further than they're planning.
I can't answer exactly because we haven't actually gotten the survey work back from Richter and Segan yet. But certainly there's going to have to be some movement of at least one of those fields. Is that fair? I don't know how.
I think that's a fair thing. One of the men's softball fields comes down towards Topo. They hit down towards Topo. I think if I just brought in a wheel out there, we have enough room to move that just a little bit further back. And be able to possibly have that become a girls softball field. That's why I'd like to go a little further with turf. But when you say a little further, that
The other
makes
thing,
it like scoop bigger.
we're still early, very early on the design stage of this, but it has always been contemplated that despite the fact that it will be a turf field and I think is very necessary to be a turf field, the integration as you push out into the park will be very much a park setting. So think of the fence that will be there, we want to have a hedged fence. So this is not going to be a metal chain link fence of the outfield. It will be a row of hedges. That we're conscious of, even though this field is really tucked into the corner next to the water tower and already operates as a JV baseball field. As you push out into those other playing fields and into more of a park setting, we want to integrate into that park setting.
So the turf fields would be right here behind this,
That's Copple Field, that's the baseball field right there that they're talking about,
and
yes,
that's the one that would be.
that's what they're talking about.
Sure.
The other question that I get a lot and from sports programs, so it really hit home to me when I brought my son over to a football game in the fall. He's a youth football player at Darien High School. And they have a beautiful varsity all turf baseball field. In the fall, scattered throughout the entire outfield and really pushing into the infield was the entire youth field hockey program for Darien. So when you build something like this, you think about, well, this is a baseball field. It's a baseball field, but what it's also is additional turf footprint that helps relieve that bottleneck that we were talking about, because you can use it a million different ways. Youth football teams could practice on this area. You don't have to have, I've coached football for my entire life, almost living here. You don't have to have a lined perfect water tower one to practice on. You need turf to practice on, so you don't get rained out when the rain schedule hits. And so that is just outside of the varsity baseball season, and even potentially during the summer, it is additional turf footprint that will help relieve that bottleneck, which I promise you, John and Jay and Tiger, who's now on the Fields Commission or the Fields Committee, knows the capacity that we currently have and the demand to be on that turf from all of our programming.
You mentioned the proposed new basketball building, I think. Can you say a little more about that? Or
I can say that a significant donor came to us and this building was going to get done. And I would tell you, this is probably the best lesson for why the Athletic Foundation exists and why it works. This building was going to get built. And it was going to get built privately to help youth basketball, because they too face a capacity issue, an expense issue. And the donor came to us and said, we would like to build this building in New Canaan. But if we can't, we'll build it in Stanford or Norwalk, we'll find a commercial space, but this building's getting built. And so we said, you came to the right people. This was, a year ago, January, and said, this is why we are here. We're all sports and community, and we are the infrastructure and the liaison with the town to be able to pursue something like this. And, long story short, over the course of the next 6 months, we found a spot for them to put that building, and we integrated them into the ultimate master plan. And in fact, one of those people joined our Athletic Foundation board. So from my standpoint, it works exactly as it was intended, right? I have no idea what people are going to want, need, desire for years to come. But I do know that we have institutional infrastructure set up to handle things like this, and it's working from my point of view.
Where would this facility?
There's a couple of locations that have been surveyed, so we know where it potentially could go. And I would just say, because we haven't fully determined exactly where it's going to be, there's like 2 or 3. They're all kind of immediately around the high school.
Okay.
And from your purposes, our purposes, I'm also typically educated in like lines of demarcation between town and Board of Ed and Dunning, which used to be what we refer to as Vienna. For a while, there's like 3 weird parcels of land in that corner. That's why I make sure that I you know, I give transparency and I make sure everybody is aware of both Board of Ed and townspeople. And really, that's why the triple P was built and written in a three-way agreement between the town, the Board of Ed and the athletic foundation.
If you feel there's any consideration that you need approval from this board, but once you determine the site need to come back to us at some point, we will obviously put you on the agenda.
Oh, 100%. And as you can see, we have enough to chew, at least in fiscal 23-24.
Yeah.
That's not to say that we're not working on it, because these things have 18 to 24 month lead times minimum.
Right.
So we are working on it. It will not be something that I come to you in the next 12 months on for approval, likely. But at some point, obviously, as we get through working on this and thinking about when we put shovels in the ground on the next, then we'd obviously come.
Any questions or comments? Mike, thank you very much for that excellent presentation.
Yeah, no,
All the
thanks.
great work you guys are doing. I hope you keep having that fundraiser every year. It was a blast.
Thanks.
And a 4-hour open bar.
It was,
It was a lot of fun. Mike, thank you. Next on the agenda is John's report.
Okay, so it's been a busy time. First thing, just because I don't want to forget about it, Summer Theater will not be coming to request space in the park this year. They're going to stay at the high school. So I just found out about that today. So I don't know anything more than that, except they're not going to be coming here. So, in no particular order. So we've been doing a lot of work on the pool. If you notice now, you'll see the cover is off. They fixed the major leak that we found in the bottom of the surge tank, and now they're working on gutter repairs. And they're gonna be putting in new pumps and things like that. But with all that said, that's just basic work after a 20-year-old pool. It's not like we have any major failure or anything like that, but it's important stuff that they've done, so. Paddle tennis is going strong. We're almost finished with the first half of our before and after school programs. And then the second half will be starting right after the winter break. As far as budgets are concerned, we went through the Board of Selectmen. And so our next meeting is with the Board of Finance, which is on Tuesday evening. One thing that has come out of the Board of Finance, they set us up with a self-sustaining fund. So what this basically does, it didn't change any of our budget numbers per se, it just changed where they go. So when we run a program, and this coming out of the self-sustaining fund, the money goes back in. So it gives us more flexibility. What's always happened in the past is right about now, we start running out of money. And we can't run programs without money, whether it's paying a teacher to run it or an outside vendor. We need budget money approved to do that. So this will give us the ability to be a little more flexible. And the one that I really think of is the father-daughter dance, which was a huge success. Sold out in 18 hours. We might have tried to switch things around with that and said, let's do a second seating. But we couldn't. We just literally can't spend that much extra money without doing a budget. So we're very happy with the self-sustaining fund. It will help. It's also in that fund is included wage weddings. So working on summer camps, we're going to go back to basically the all-day model that we stopped when COVID happened. We're including swimming, we're including some field trips. We think it's going to be very successful. There's some new ideas coming. We will be getting new software for registering for all programs. We've got some limitations with our present software. We're switching to a different vendor. Everything we know is going to be a lot smoother and a lot easier for people to register. So we're very happy with that. As you guys know, there's not been any snow. So the Parks Department has been doing a lot of work. You noticed out by the paddle courts, there's been a guy rebuilding the stone wall out there, and then they cleaned up all the other brush on there. We're gonna keep that down so we could see the beautiful wall. So that's great. We've been doing some work on trail work. They've added some screening, some planting screening, which you never really do in February over to Saks Garage, just to, shield it from the neighborhood. And they've gone through all the benches that we planned on doing, our winter bench repairs, pressure washing, retreating, that type of stuff. So As far as the playground is concerned, the one here at Waveney, we're gonna have our first meeting next week. So we look forward to kicking that off. And then the only other thing of note is we had a request about food trucks at the rink and, you know, they probably, next year will probably be coming back looking, for approval next fall. Before the season. Other than that, anybody have any questions?
John, right now that Waverly, will we see the plan before that's implemented?
You definitely will. The only thing we have so far is a rendering from one company. Which is not a final plan by any means. We have not picked the company, and that's what the committee will do. So they'll pick, you know, exactly what we want out there, and what we all handicapped accessible, looking at, having basically 3 sections. So young kids, and then middle kids, and then a separate adult section. So similar to the athletic equipment that's up there, we'll have an adult section, separated off.
Thank you. I have one quick question on Kiwanis Park. I know that their, the feedback was to try to have some food and beverage there next summer. Any thoughts on that, where that stands, or at least beverage?
Yeah, right this moment, nothing. We haven't done anything. He's given me one vendor that I also turned over to, the family fourth, which are the food truck vendors there. So whether we have a food truck or we have a concession stand open right now, we don't have anything in place. We still like to do that, but if it's a food truck, we're gonna be coming back for approval. Okay.
I wanted to ask about the paddle courts. I know we have 6 paddle court in the plan. What's up with that?
The 6 paddle court is not in this year's budget request.
Okay,
It is in the following year.
okay.
So what's there's a plan being worked on and hasn't been finalized for the picnic area that was
Yes.
approved here.
Right,
That's in this next year's budget. And that can be built without any problems with another court coming in the following year.
that's exactly what I wanted. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
it's all worked together. The plan is drawn with that 6 court in place, but it's not in this coming budget year.
Great.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hmm.
Any questions? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Summer theater, do you have any more info on?
I just got an email today saying the summer theater will not be coming to Waverly, they're gonna be at the high school.
And so the
Yes, yep. Other than that, I don't know the further thing.
Was the side of the road that's now called Tiger Lane, was that high school property?
No, that's part of the park.
It was part of the park, so it can be in the place. Interesting.
My thought is that it's gonna be inside this year,
Oh, I see.
but I don't know that. That was my first reaction, because there's not a great place at the high school to have it otherwise.
Right,
So.
thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, no other questions? In terms of my report, it'll be very brief. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, March 15th. Please note that, obviously, agenda will come out. That's it for my report. Keep it brief, but thank you all. Welcome, Kevin.
I actually came accidentally. I was over at Waverly House and I realized you guys were here, so have you conducted your election for officers this year? Otherwise, I can do that tonight.
Okay.
You haven't done it?
Sounds good. That's fine if you want to.
Yeah, but, well, it's actually my call. So
Okay.
I called.
It doesn't have to go on the agenda.
Right. Well, I would ask for nomination for chair for the ensuing year.
For chairman?
For chairman.
I nominate George Benny.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further nominations? Hearing none. All in favor of electing George as chair? Anyone else? That seems unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Any other secretary or?
I'm the secretary right now.
Well, I would, nominations for the role of secretary. Jean? Jean? Francesca? Is there a second for Francesca?
Second.
Any further nominations? Hearing none, all in favor? That's unanimous also. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Good. So without further ado, is there a motion to adjourn? To adjourn. Okay, all those in favor? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. They're good. Shall we get this thing? Oh, nervous. I'm not surprised.
Well done. That was right. It was assistant in the part.